Well, first let me start by saying, as Lionel had mentioned about journalists in their Twitter bios, my opinions are my own, so these may not represent the organization. I just think there should be a little bit of a reset about the conversation about what Facebook and Google are and how that presents itself. I do believe they are media companies. They are also platforms, and I'm not so sure that they're our friends. And I think that there has to be a little bit of a recognition about that piece of it. And what I mean by that is Google and Facebook have presented themselves as partners to the newspaper industry. But when one partner has their hands around the neck of the other partner, I'm not sure that's a partnership. I've covered business for 20 years. The most important thing that the most important quality of any partnership is trust. And there is politely a deficit trust right now between both the newspaper publishers, Facebook and Google, more so Facebook than Google. It's worth noting there's a distinction between how I think the industry looks at it. And mind you, this distinction about trust about Google and Facebook isn't just coming from the newspaper industry, it's coming from the other side, which is, I just got back from Cannes. The advertisers have the same distrust. And I don't think that that whole model is going to work for them nor for us until and if we actually find a way to create that trust and to create a real partnership. I'd like to be hopeful. I'm a professional skeptic, given that I'm a journalist. But as Mark said, perhaps there's a window, and maybe we can take advantage of it. The other analogy that I use when I think about the relationship between Facebook, Google, and the media industry is rather than think about it as a partnership, unfortunately, I think what it's turned into is a bit of a landlord-tenant situation, right? They're the landlords, they own the shopping mall, and we've become the tenants, and they are squeezing us on the rent. The question is how that relationship can change. And to the extent that they are taking advantage of this industry and the challenges that it faces, what kind of leverage does the industry actually have to shift the dialogue, in truth? Three things I'd mention. One that's just worth noting is I think obviously we have to do a better job internally training people. But I think the other piece of it is I think the traditional path with which people make their way to a newsroom is changing. The idea that someone's going to go to school and then go to journalism school, check the box, and become a journalist, I think is not, especially in an environment where we're trying to find the most unique voices. And so I think I think we are now finding oftentimes that we're hiring people from all sorts of different places with all sorts of different backgrounds. And so we might be going to look for filmmakers who've made documentaries. We might actually be going into the creative spaces, ad agencies even, and moving some of those people over. I used to work with a guy named Nick Bilton, who now works at Vanity Fair, who started as a graphic designer and now is a journalist. I mean, a writing journalist. Our best legal writer at the New York Times, who covers the Supreme Court, was actually our lawyer for the New York Times before. So I just think in terms of the natural progression of where all these people come from, it's going to be different. But it does raise one important point, and Lionel mentioned it briefly earlier, which is we've all talked about this business in a very theoretical sense, and the newspaper business to some degree is a bit of a factory, but it is really a human business, and especially as we keep talking about the importance of story, it's a talent business. It ultimately is a talent business. And you have to nurture that talent, and you have to handhold that talent, and that's a very hard thing to do. And it's very hard to put on a spreadsheet what it means, what the relationship between a writer and an editor really is about. And I think that despite all the numbers and challenges that we face, the biggest challenge is always still finding the right talent.